was one of the chemicals on that derailed train in East Palestine. Here's the governor of Ohio.
Norfolk Southern Railroad is planning a controlled release of the vinyl chloride at approximately 3:30 p.m. The controlled release of the toxic chemicals also has the potential to be deadly if inhaled. Those in the red area are facing grave danger of death if they are still in that area. Those living in the orange area are at risk of severe injury, including skin burns and serious lung damage. To state the obvious, all of you need to leave as well, and I need to leave as well, too. So.
Notice the tone and the chuckle at the end. That's Governor Mike DeWine of Ohio, a great defender of Ukraine. And he's just announced that, well, thousands of people in his state could die. But he doesn't seem panicked by it. It's not a hair-on-fire emergency. It's not like Kyiv is in peril. So after that controlled burn of the deadly chemicals, officials told residents within East Palestine that if you live within a 2-mile radius of the derailment, you had to shelter in place and keep your windows closed. Residents closer to the mushroom cloud were put up in a hotel. Within days, they were all let back into their home without the Department of Transportation in Washington saying a word. As one hazardous materials specialist put it, the whole town may be unsafe as a result of this. Watch.
The railroad company was responsible for this, and before these people went back to their homes, their homes should have been tested. Their homes should have been cleaned. From the onset, these people were being marginalized in an effort to mitigate this. And at first they were being told, go get a hotel and keep your receipts and we'll reimburse us. East Palestine is a very poor community. Some of these people don't have the money to go get the hotels and do all of and all this stuff. This really looks like a nuclear winter. And I said, well, pretty much, yeah. We nuked this town with chemicals, and this is what they're getting.
Now, imagine if this had happened in, well, the favored cities of Philadelphia and Detroit. Lots of poor people in those cities. Everyone feels for them. Everyone wants them to be safe. Imagine at the same time this has happened in Washington, D.C. and, say, Georgetown. Well, the National Guard would be called in. There'd be no mushroom cloud of toxic chemicals on the horizon. We can promise you that. And, of course, in both cases, if this affected the rich or the favored poor, it would be the lead of every news channel in the world. But it happened to the poor, benighted town of East Palestine, Ohio, whose people are forgotten and, in the view of the people who lead this country, forgettable. So no big deal. Pete Buttigieg, the Department of Transportation, decided to weigh in, quote, "Our federal partners at EPA are on site and monitoring indoor and outdoor air quality." Oh, air quality. What about water? Oh, water. What does that have to do with climate change? Well, it's the one thing you can't do without. After about 2.5 days, you die. But they're not even checking the water. They're only checking the air a week after people were let back into their homes. And according to Mayor Pete, the EPA hasn't even screened 200 homes in close proximity to the burn that wasn't organic or accidental. It was authorities burning it. So they just don't care, actually. Could that be clearer? While residents in East Palestine were inhaling toxic fumes, Mayor Pete was joking about the Chinese spy balloon his boss allowed to fly across the country. He's a funny guy. Watch this.
I mean, if you look at what the American transportation systems have faced in the last 2 or 3 years, partly because of the pandemic, we've faced issues from container shipping to airline cancellations. Mm-hmm. Now we got balloons.
That's right.
So you're completely incompetent. There's never been a cabinet secretary this flamboyantly incompetent and this so obviously uncaring, almost to the point of evil, if we're being honest about it. And then the little joke at the end, that was Mayor Pete yesterday, nearly 2 weeks after the disaster in Ohio. He's kind of pretending it didn't happen and telling his little jokes. But we are interested in why it happened and in its effects, and for that reason we're grateful to be joined right now by Nathan Izotic. He is a resident of East Palestine. He lives just 2 miles from where it happened, and he joins us now with his wife, Kelly. Thank you both so much for joining us. Are you concerned about being there right now?
Yes, we are.
Very.
Very. I bet you are. Are you seeing effects? I mean, it seems from our perspective, hundreds of miles away, like there are dangerous chemicals in your town. Are you seeing the effects of that?
We are seeing them locally inside of our bodies, what we're experiencing. Local fish in our creeks have died. Oily sheens and coloration in our water. Constant smell of burning plastics and chemicals in the air. Issues with our dog, vomiting, acting lethargic. It's scary stuff here, Tucker.
Well, it's horrifying. It's horrifying. It's a nightmare. And again, if that had happened in Washington, D.C., no one would be living there right now. Is there any federal presence? Are you getting the sense that anybody to whom you send your tax dollars every year cares about what happens to you?
At this moment, unfortunately not.
No. So there are no EPA officials in hazmat suits, no one from the Department of Transportation's walking around trying to figure out how this happened, how to prevent it again, that you have seen?
Nobody's knocking on our door.
How many of your neighbors are still there?
Our neighbor across the street and our next door neighbor, they came back on this past Saturday as well when we returned back home. And that was days after when they said it was safe to return, and we still didn't feel comfortable. And as soon as we got into the Ohio line, we immediately smelled the chemicals yet again. And since then, I now have the chemical burns and reaction rash on my face, and my throat is getting irritated again, and feeling very uneasy, very uneasy.
Man, I'm so sorry. And I'm just assuming, looking at the numbers, I've never been to East Palestine, but it looks like a lot of people there probably don't have anywhere else to go.
That's just the thing. We actually just moved here last May and got a nice 14-acre property, a place to kind of call our final home, and we're outskirts of the town where the incident happened, but in town, I mean, it's a very small-knit area, and a lot of them are lower class and low income, and fortunately, we had a place to go on Sunday whenever we got the 2-mile evacuation order, but a lot of those families unfortunately didn't, and this should have happened on Friday, when
the initial crash
when it initially happened, and the chemicals were, for whatever reason, not released or known. And in my opinion, and in my industry, there's a paper trail with anything, especially when it comes to rail cars. There are SDSs, there are manifests, and even if they didn't know, benefit of the doubt, what happened then, it's a simple call to the producer, and they can have it to you in minutes. So there's a lot of fishy stuff going on. Yeah.
They know what's in their rail cars. Of course they do. Nathan Kelly, thank you for joining us, and Godspeed in East Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.